Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in the very many ways that we are able and up for you all these days, including on-air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on our various social media pages, including Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under El Paso History, El Paso History Radio Show, or El Paso History TV. I'm mentioning more of those here in just a second. But of course, today is Saturday, October 22nd, and we are talking about the history and some particular tourism, even some updates coming from one of the most historic sites and foundational sites here in El Paso, the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. You can, of course, again, find us on air, online streaming at ktsmradio.com specifically, and with the full video on the El Paso History Radio Show Facebook page and YouTube channel, as well as on our partner Facebook group, Remember in El Paso When. This is, of course, the place where we say Texas history begins in El Paso. Do have a history moment at the top of hour 2 from documentary filmmaker Jackson Polk, talking about one of the previous pandemics in history. Of course, and talking more about that, and that'll be at the top of the hour 2. But joining us here in studio today, guests today are Danielle Brissette, Site Manager, and Machelle Wood, Education and Public Programs Coordinator with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. Thank you both very much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely happy to have you all on to talk about these many things going on, because it's been a minute since we have had you all on the program. In fact, I don't think it's been since we've had the advanced video that we have now been getting to incorporate here. So for those who have maybe missed this at all here, whenever you're introducing someone, I mean, I feel like many people may have heard about the phrase Magoffin, Magoffin Home, or at the very least like the streets and some of the names kind of thing. They may think, wait, there's something behind that. So whatever introduction point that you have with someone in the community that is basically saying, wait, so what is this place? Where do you start? How do you go about it?
Well, it's that 5-second elevator talk, right? Usually the catchphrase that I use to encapsulate the importance of the home is, this is the story of a founding family of El Paso, of Irish, Spanish, Mexican-American immigrants who helped not only write the articles of incorporation that formed our great city, but also helped develop all the infrastructure that we come to expect even today. So many of the things that we think about today as being very modern El Paso starts with Joseph and Octavia Magoffin. Mm-hmm.
And they're historic names in their own right. And so, Danielle?
And they arrived here in a time where things were almost incomprehensibly different.
Oh, yeah.
It was a vast desert. People were subsistence farming for most of their food resources, and they transformed the shape of people's lives by helping to bring in the railroad and a lot of those infrastructure pieces that Machelle was talking about. The city today is shaped by what happened back then, and we're the oldest residential building that's operated to the public in the city. So it's a really beautiful window at the history of El Paso through the lens of one important family.
And just to definitely emphasize that, when Joseph writes those articles of incorporation and presents them in 1873, we're coming up on our 150th anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah. There were only 736 people living in the county.
Right.
Not the city, 300 in the city, but 736 in the county. After the train comes in 1881, the next census in 1890 shows there's over 10,000 people. That's just how quick all the changes get made and how it brings people to El Paso.
So the experience of coming to the Magoffin home, we are a historic house. We're a 19-room, beautiful adobe mansion that was built by the family in 1875. Well, it was built by the experts hired by the family to construct the home, of course. And people come to a beautiful visitor center. We escort them across the street, and we do a guided tour through most of the rooms of the building. And some of the rooms are interpreted to different time periods. 3 different generations of family members inhabited the home. They made upgrades. They added new technology, phone, water, all of those things that we care about, electricity.
Right.
And so we talk about the changes, and guests get to see the development over time and talk about the ways that things have changed, especially because Joseph Magoffin owned all the land from the foot of the Franklin Mountains to the river. And
Right.
so a large amount of the area where I spend my time and where I grew up was once owned by the Magoffins and was certainly heavily influenced by their opinions. And it's an interesting lens to look at El Paso. I'm enjoying it as a native person myself.
You know what's funny? You talk about how we talk about the changes, but in a lot of ways, it's also relating to the fact that they still had the same concerns that we had. They still had many of the similar experiences to what we have today. I mean, even though the technology and the surroundings may have changed, really the people are still people. And it's really interesting to tie that back.
Absolutely. And so one of the reasons we're talking about this, and there's a whole lot more of that history to go into. I don't want to gloss over that by any means, and we'll certainly delve more into it as we go through the couple hours of the program here. But that, of course, you have a very specific event where people can come and see this. That is also, well, appropriate for the month as well. You're going to be doing a very specific night tour of the home coming up a little bit later this month, right?
Yes. We spend most of our tours talking about how the Magoffins lived and focusing on what they did during their lifetimes. This one night only, we talk about how they died and what sort of services were available to them. And, when we talk about, for lack of a better phrase, the death industry today, it's, we have lots of choices, lots of options, but those weren't available very early on. And so we get to, during different generations of the Magoffin family, we get to see how that changes, how many options they had available.
I mean, yeah, just to put in perspective, if we were the amount of even just, say, funeral homes open today as there were back then, people would only be working in funeral homes, and even then, probably more than there were people at that point in time, like you're talking about within the city. So it's not exactly like this was a mortuary industry town at that point in time.
Not yet.
So there was, a lot of lack of availability and changes here. We've, of course, had on previously some of the historic cemeteries in our area, which has some foundings around then. But again, particularly with one that comes to mind like Concordia Cemetery, it is styled as a pioneer cemetery because that's at kind of contemporaneously with this, what would have been available and many of the ways about that. So again, that's what you'll be focusing on with this upcoming tour, right?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, one of the members of the family that we're talking about, she first gets buried in Concordia.
Absolutely here. So, there's a lot more specifics I want to get into with this history of it because there's so many connections with even other recent topics such as, Fort Bliss. Basically, the reason it's still here, one of the previous sites that those listening last week, we were mentioning Magoffinsville. Yeah, there's that connection here. And so the reason that we essentially still have the post in the region is more or less the efforts of this family as well. So, again, a lot of history. But again, with that upcoming event and the tours, we have some of the pictures from previous years when you all have been able to have it, when people are out gathered in front here. Again, the gleaming white and polish and exterior of the building hits a little bit differently at night, I will say, particularly since you also got some of those brilliant glass windows and colored glass, again, just slightly hitting differently at night in those kind of ways here. So if people are going on this event, going on these tours, talking about, again, the not just the living, but the end of life events going on for them, what are some of the things that they're going to hear about and the things that they're going to see, like we're seeing in these pictures here?
So actually in this picture here, you will see one of our volunteers, Sharon. She actually will be here on the 28th as well. Amazing, one of our amazing volunteers who will tell you stories of Josephine Magoffin Richardson. And that gentleman standing there, that's actually Bud. He's a vice president of our Casa Magoffin Compañeros, which is our friends group that helps support us. And so at any rate, this is the front hall of the home. This is the way people would have entered the home. And right from the start, you can see that portrait hanging back behind Bud. That's Harriet Magoffin Glasgow.
Which is, in its own way, kind of a juxtaposition of the history there, because to describe it further for our radio audience here, the people standing there, Bud, contemporary clothing. They're the volunteer in a, I would call it generally Victorian-styled long blue dress with a kind of, has the, is that a cameo she's wearing on the front?
I believe so.
It looks like a cameo, but close-necked, kind of frilly shoulders, long sleeves with a little bit of like undershirt frilling coming out from the side of it. And then that picture you're talking about there, that looks, I'm going to again call that generally, maybe not entirely, but I think most people would call it a fair description of almost flapper style.
It is. It's 1920s. Painted in Paris. But Harriet's story, she's a story we relate in the home because she actually passes away from tuberculosis. Yeah. And so kind of an interesting, look at health and how health was handled even in El Paso at the time.
Yeah, I mean, there again, you want to talk regionally. I mean, at that point in time, and even a little bit more advanced from just the founding of the home to also then the past history. I mean, there were the idea of sanatoriums and there being, the clean, dry mountain air and those kind of things. And people either coming here or up to like nearby reaches such as Cloudcroft in order to take the health, the perceived health benefits, I guess I should say, because I mean, sure, there may be some backing for it, but there's a reason that we focus more on like treatments and modern options today.
Yes, absolutely. And those are definitely discussions that we will be having that evening for sure.
Especially related to Octavia Magoffin, who became ill as part of her public service. She was very involved in caring for her neighbors and providing medical services, and we believe became ill in treatment of a neighbor, and then was taken by her husband, Joseph, across the country trying to find a climate or a doctor that could help her, and in the end failed. And he telegraphed home to communicate it. The newspapers published articles warning the town what had happened and preparing for his arrival with her body and their eventual arrangements. The entire way that the whole city reacted to some of these passings is different than how it would be today. I don't think anyone would expect that if a former city alderman, for example, passed away, that we would shut down all city functions for an hour in the afternoon in honor. But that's what has happened for members of the Magoffin family and what was standard back then. So just the way that we as modern people react to death has changed. And this is a neat way to talk about it.
Oh, for sure.
So when you come into the home for our night tours on the 28th of October, all the lights will be the way that they were. There will be flickering candles and fires in the grate, replicas, of course. And we'll have guides who are enriched with all of these stories and a particular focus on the end of life and the traditions. And it's interesting. It's quirky. It's something that happens to all of us. It's something that we all end up experiencing in different ways throughout our lifetimes. And there's not a lot of venues to think about it or to discuss it or even just to reflect on the ways it's changed. I think this will be a fun event, even if it does have a topic that's a little bit more depressing.
Well, I'll call it definitely appropriate for the season again that we are in here, as we are both, of course, it's spooky season in general, but of course also other regional and more, cultural events that we deal with here at Dia de los Muertos. So thinking about this, again, very appropriate, and one of the reasons we're focusing on that for this show here today. So again,
of course,
that's Danielle Brissette, site manager. Also joining us here in studio, Machelle Wood, education and public programs coordinator. Again, both with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. Want to find out any details about what we're talking about, those upcoming events, and more of it here. Again, that website to find them is visitmagoffinhome.com. That's Visit Magoffin Home, and Magoffin spelled Magoffin.com. And I'll direct you to the Texas Historical Commission website. And again, that event, October 28th, the night tour. People need to register for this in advance, right?
Yes, absolutely. They have to actually pay in advance. We can do over the phone. We also can do in person, but yes, get your tickets in advance.
We have a limited capability to bring people through after hours. And so we will be filling up and unfortunately turning people away, but this is going to be an ongoing event. So plan on coming next year if you can't come this year.
Absolutely here. So we'll have to talk more about that after the next segment. Got to take that first break of the hour right now. So talking more about this event and the history, going to connect some of those topics we have been discussing here through the Magoffin Home and all of those events. So stay tuned. More on the El Paso History Radio Show after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archive pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano, and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the Juan and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home Team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Waco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC 7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail, plus the Guadalupe Mission in Juarez, Mexico. That church was built in 1659 and is the oldest known adobe building on the El Paso Juarez Valley. It still welcomes Catholic worshipers today. Go to El Paso History TV on youtube.com. You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Given-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. A couple of things we want to mention to you about. Of course, we are the El Paso History Radio Show on Facebook, and I'll get many other social media outlets, including YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. More on that in a second. But on the Facebook, you can go there for our weekly promo announcements on the topics of the program each and every week, including what we got coming up for you next week. Talking about that a little bit later in the show as well. Also, specifically, want to go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/El Paso History TV, where you can find, well, both these shows, kind of part of our archive, as well as the entire series of El Paso Gold DVDs covering more than the last couple of decades, more than actually, as part of our discussion we've been having right before the show today, of history production and documentaries here in town, fully uploaded and free for your viewing pleasure, plus the more recent 20 ABC7 History TV segments produced by, again, El Paso History TV that I had in on, mostly on the back end behind the camera, but again, if you want to see those, all over on youtube.com/El Paso History TV. And a reminder to support some of our advertisers. I'll be headed out right after the airing of this program today to Pepe's New Mexican restaurant in Canutillo, open for in-house dining at 6761 Donovan Drive. You can give them a call at 915-877-2152. That's 915-877-2152. Definitely out there and open today. They do have some changing hours during the week, so any questions, give them a call, 915-877-2152. Home of the Juan and only margarita, and historic in their own right, as they have kept both the recipes and a lot of the stuff used to be in the front room of the old Greg's restaurant alive and well at their location. So I will be headed there. But in the meantime, joining us here, of course, in studio, joined still by Danielle Brissette, site manager, and Machelle Wood, education and public programs coordinator with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. And so we were mentioning a little bit in the first segment, both, of course, the upcoming event where people can come in, special event, I should add, because there are, of course, regular tours that happen at this house and site, and people can, of course, take advantage of those. But the night tour, the ability to be in, around, and see the site. Again, I've had a unique opportunity over the years to see and do that in a lot of different ways that are not generally available. So to get to do this is certainly a special opportunity for anyone to see it in the, well, again, different ways, because, like, well, you were kind of mentioning, well, the way I kind of think of it is that the story of the house is the story of the family, is kind of the story of El Paso. So when you were mentioning particularly about the rooms and kept the different eras, of course, you've got, as we have some of the pictures up there, of course, you know, some of the rooms, obviously with electric light there with part of them. But, I mean, there's a lot of maybe not totally full floodlights, exactly, because, I mean, there was different lighting used at different periods of time, right? I mean, going from, of course, pre-electricity or even pre, gas service, things available like that.
Yeah, very early on, from what we understand, pre-railroad, they had kerosene lamps, candles, things like that. Later on, though, with the train, Joseph actually electrifies the home pretty quickly.
Really?
Yeah. Now, of course, that's not to say that it's fully electric, like they had, outlets in the walls and things. But they had like 3 rooms that we can tell that were electrified, and it was probably the public-facing room. If you look at the home, you notice there's on the front of it, there's scoring in the plaster. And, and you can see the canales sticking out at the top. But there is scoring, just light lines in the white plaster walls, and it's to make it look like these big blocks.
Right.
But the funny thing is, if you go on the backside, those don't exist.
No, of course not. It's adobe.
Right.
It's adobe, thick adobe construction.
But why do the decoration on the front of the building and not the back? You don't want to waste time decorating something no one's going to see, right? So really, their public areas in their homes were the ones they focused their lighting efforts on.
The home was a sales pitch. The home was a place to bring in business partners and wine and dine and make those things happen.
And I just recently found out Jay Gould of railroad magnate fame, apparently when he knew he was coming to El Paso to talk about trains and stuff, he specifically requested to stay at the Magoffin home.
Well, why wouldn't you? If you're this back east magnate, you've never been to some place made of adobe in this beautiful style, it would have been exciting and intriguing and
exotic.
Different. And I think the Magoffins leaned into that Southwestern exoticism in order to bring resources to this area. They marketed El Paso before we had a Chamber of Commerce. And I don't think it hurt that he was part of the electric company to install electric lights. A little bit of an advertisement for a thing that benefits the family is not bad.
Joseph was a founding member of the Chamber of Commerce, so yes.
And the water company, and he helped with EPISD, the Masons, the police, the fire.
Yeah, all of it.
Yep.
So like I said, a lot of topics connected here.
Busy people.
Busy people, important foundational family, and we've actually got a picture that kind of demonstrates their literal position in town, as it may be a little bit hard for people to understand from solely the modern concept, but we'll get into more of that here. Already got to take that next break. Again, joining us here in studio, that's Danielle Brissette, site manager, and Machelle Wood, education and public programs coordinator, going again with all, of course, the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. More information, more details, visit magoffinhome.com. But back after this break with more and that history here on the El Paso History Radio Show on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on...
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Of course, got to mention some of our other great partners in promoting different parts of our history and local events, including, of course, Celebration of Our Mountains. Find them over online at celebrationofourmountains.org, where they have a whole list of things coming up. And just saying, with the weather getting slightly cooler, whatever you want to call it based on the day, a lot more opportunities to really get out and see things without frying the top of your head off. So particularly they've got, like, say, coming up tomorrow, they do have the Three Rivers petroglyph tours. They've got a tour of the Masonic Cemetery of Las Cruces a little bit later in the week. Walk to save your dog and save puppies and kittens. That's the name of the event. Or hike to the Ruby Mine in early November. Whole list of events going well through the end of the year and already, I do believe, into next year at this point. So if you want to go and check out their details, their events, how you can get out and about and see again both the historic, natural, and physical environment of our region, celebrationofourmountains.org. So, of course, joining us here in studio, we are joined right now by Danielle Brissette, the site manager, and Machelle Wood, education and public programs coordinator with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. And again, we're talking about an event that you all have coming up, specifically the night tour of the Magoffin Home, happening on October 28th. But just delving into the history of the home itself, again, said briefly last segment that the history of the home is the history of the family, is the history of the city at large. And there's a particular picture that kind of exemplifies this. This is that picture of the El Paso from the quote-unquote aerial view, because there was not a plane at this point in time, but showing the grid of the what we would now consider downtown and south central El Paso, including one of the prominent features of the rail yard. But this was El Paso as it existed, and of course the time frames, or at least part of the time frames we're talking about here, and it was never actually pointed out to me, because I mean, look, people may have seen this picture in and around in different restaurants, but it was never actually pointed out to me anyway where exactly the Magoffin home is. And you can see it in the upper right hand corner of the picture, surrounded by all the little dots signifying an orchard, and we have the actual close-up zoom in of it here, where you can see that, yes, it's pretty well surrounded, and that's how far out, not exactly like, way the heck out there, but outskirts of town, certainly, where this house was both established and, again, continues to exist till this day.
Yes.
There are quotes in the newspaper talking about the Magoffin home as a country mansion, and that maybe one day El Paso will expand and exceed beyond it.
So essentially the way we have been dealing with the concept of what is East El Paso versus Far East, this would have been, well, they would have been, I guess, Far East in their own right at that point in time, basically.
Yeah,
absolutely. A completely different city.
And what we're talking about now, again, for anyone not sure we're talking, what is actually the cross intersections of where the home sits today?
We are west of Cotton, and we are east of Taze. We consider ourselves downtown.
Yeah. Downtown,
Yes.
kind of. If you go out to the what's being now starting to be considered like the Texas Avenue corridor,
Yes.
Yeah.
you head out that direction. A couple streets over from that, of course, here, but that's the direction we're talking about. So downtown, central, certainly
Yes.
at this point
Yeah.
in time here, and I mean, a strong argument for downtown. I'm not trying to disagree with you there, but just the way I've heard it discussed, and so yeah, this is how the changes have gone here. So they used
And
to be
it's-
out there, and now they are right there.
And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a beautiful neighborhood. The history
Oh,
of
yeah.
the houses and things. One of the features that we've got available at the home is a brochure that is a walking tour. And it takes you through the history and development of that area. After the orchard and some floods, the orchard faded away and Joseph sold off the land to a lot of the local establishments nearby. San
Right.
Jacinto College. Eventually, some eminent domain came in and created the Sun Plaza complex that currently sort of envelops the Magoffin home. And you can watch the development of El Paso and this community through that walking tour, including the really neat Art Deco water pump station that's just behind the
Oh,
museum.
right.
And the Avenue of the Dead
Yes.
that goes from the church, Immaculate Conception, to the cemetery.
yes.
Yeah.
Which is a nice way to add in that we're also trying to engage with this topic on a number of different ways. The topic of death and dying and the creepy season. And so one of the small things we've done is build a couple of ofrendas in one of our unused
okay.
room in the Magoffin home. So we have one that Max put together, which is almost an ofrenda in its purest form, with a lot of the objects and the symbols that are associated with it and an explanation that our staff can provide.
Okay.
And we've done another one with many different family members and community partners throughout the years. And that's available with any tour through the home, including the night tours, which again will be on October 28th, Friday. And you need to RSVP by visiting visitmagoffinhome.com or giving us a call.
Absolutely here. And again, we got the picture of one of the examples of the ofrendas and things that you have set up around the home, because, of course, it's not even just recognition of, funerary rites or the ways of life and death in the home, but, of course, the cultural traditions around here. So you've got that going on through November 2nd with the ofrendas anyway, those being on exhibit through the home. So if people do the, daily tours, the self-guided, those things, they'll be able to see those.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Absolutely. So again, the ways that these is connected to El Paso's history is, again, the house itself here. I mean, heck, even just on looking on the map that we had popped up there, where it was in the orchard that it was currently with, is not even how it looks currently, because the house essentially got started out as what's the simplest construction you can do, a one-floor rectangle, essentially. And sure, I mean, it was using the construction available to today, even if they were putting on the airs with the limestone blocks view, like you mentioned there, that we do the picture of one of the previous night tours. You can see it on the right-hand side of the etchings to make it look like it, but that definitely not something that would have been easily available in our area. But the fact of the matter is that it started out simple construction and expanded over the year. That's why I say the story of the house is the story of the family, because they kind of made it to, I guess, the Magoffin home, if you look at it from the aerial view now, is kind of a C shape. It's a horseshoe shape, and that's because they kind of added on rooms along and occasionally outside of it, but then kind of connected them over the many years and the generation. It's truly a generational house.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
in the same way, I'm living in the house that my father grew up in. It was built in the 1960s, and it is not what my grandparents built. It is a substantially different home. And people back then, just the same as today, trends go out of style, technology gets invented, and it gets changed, and it reflects what's available in El Paso.
And even the numbers of people living in the home
Yes,
and what they
of
need
course.
those rooms for will change too. And most of the rooms, even in the Magoffin home, they changed purpose. Like we have the formal parlor that will be in on the event on the 28th. And at one point, that actually is a bedroom for one of the grandchildren. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it just depends on who's living there and when, just like in our own homes.
In fact, I've read, and this might require some verification, that only one of the rooms in the home was used for the same purpose through most of its existence, and that was the
Yeah.
dining room. But
Dining room and kitchen. Although, kitchens in historic buildings are funky.
Yeah.
There's weird stuff you have to really, but honestly, the trash pit. You usually go to
Oh, yeah.
archaeology. Yeah. You got to look for the trash pit, follow the trash to find the kitchen, right? And that trash pit actually sits outside where the kitchen is, where we would expect it today.
Yeah,
So
kitchens are, particularly in history, funny things because if there's going to be a fire, that's where it's going to start. So those kind of considerations, but also trash pits and also, to my understanding, outhouses, because from both of them you can learn, what they were using, what they were throwing away, and then particularly from outhouses you can find to my understanding, the china patterns, because if someone broke a nice piece of china, they're not going to just put it in the trash pit where anyone can see it and see that they broke it. They're going to go and throw it away in the place where no one's going to look too closely, so to speak.
Clever. Yes.
yeah, absolutely. And we have pieces of china. So yes.
Exactly, and maybe don't touch them is all I'm saying. So.
And as the home is developed over time, we're looking to make changes as well. So there's a couple of rooms when you enter the home on the right-hand side that were part of the original home that eventually became the sort of separate apartment of the last owner of the home, Tia Magoffin, who donated it to the city of El Paso and the state of Texas. And Tia's suites are going to be reinterpreted in the next year as her bedroom and working art studio. And so we hope to come back soon to talk about that project and how we're building that. And there will now be a chance to take a peek at El Paso in the 1960s and 70s, which is a groovy and interesting time, especially for the art scene, for civic and political history. It's going to open up what the Magoffin home can talk about.
My favorite's the color choices.
Yes. Mac is finishes and beautiful things. And Tia, being an artist, had a sense of style.
Oh, boy, did she
Interesting.
ever. Yeah.
And so this will be the area that, in the time that I was spending more time at the home, that would have been essentially the admin offices for you all, right?
Yes,
Previously.
in fact, that's where my first office, when I first started working for the Magoffin home, was in that first room. So, yeah, now that's becoming a functioning art studio in the home.
So if you're interested in that project, please be in touch with us. We definitely need volunteers and community partners to assist with that. And we're really hoping to be more open and part of the community, bring the Magoffin home out to people. And one of the ways that we're doing that is we're going to be opening on Sundays starting after Thanksgiving. So we closed on Sundays during COVID, like many people. And at the idea of Mac, we're going to reopen and bring back the Magoffin home on both weekend days for tours and visitation.
Yeah, we did have good visitation on Sundays. Not everyone has a Saturday available. They're doing family events and things.
Or radio shows,
Yeah, radio shows, absolutely. And so having Sundays available as an option, opens up to a lot more of our community to come visit. So definitely want to share the story.
Absolutely. So that'll be very interesting to see. And I have to ask, do you also have the puffer fish?
Yes, of course.
Yes, we do.
So I just got to imagine the juxtaposition of the 1960 styles on, because, we've got, just to lay it out here, we've got that front hallway area where you come through the colored doors. And then, so this picture looking on the right-hand side there, because you're facing the inside of the front door, the right-hand side, that'll be the former parlor. And then across the way with the, again, like the Victorian panel, a lot of doilies I remember as well.
Yes.
And again, that puffer fish hanging from the chandelier, because that was a style of the time. And then across the hallway from that, on the left-hand side of this picture, will be these 1960s stylings. Again, truly, I can imagine that'll look very interesting.
It'll be almost 100 years of span. It'll be it'll be shocking, I think.
I think so.
But a wonderful chance. We've got a huge repository of artworks and furniture that should be in those rooms. So we're bringing it back.
Absolutely. Here again, that's Danielle Brissette, site manager, and Machelle Wood, education and public programs coordinator with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. Again, any of the details, including their upcoming event on October 28th, that night tour, visit magoffinhome.com. That's visit MAGOFFIN home.com. Got to take that next break. Now, coming out of this break, talk a little bit more about some of the history, restoration, those things, and get to that next hour. So stay tuned. More talk more on the El Paso History Radio Show after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-59.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. If you want to go and find out some different aspects of different parts of El Paso's history, Rick Kern's music podcast, Talk and Rock Radio, delving into a lot of the performance history, at least in the just recently modern era that has been going on. Of course, his extensive experience with many of the, names you might recognize, including such things and songs as I Fought the Law and the Law Won, among other things, and a lot of other notable names. Of course, he was involved with and running the Border Legends Tour, which I got the chance to be involved in for several years. But if you want to find out his remembrances, his guests, and all those things, talkandrockradio.com. That's talk, A-N-D, rock, radio.com. And of course, got to mention one more of our sponsors here. Call 915-588-1850 for Patrick Tuttle, Coldwell Banker, Heritage Real Estate. Again, 915-588-1850. Patrick is an excellent realtor to go to in El Paso for sales for home or rent. Have some friends that are part of his clientele base that are very appreciative of his guarantees when it comes to what they're able to do with renting. And the house that we are currently in, purchased through the work of his great team. So definitely recommend him. He's done a lot of great work for my friends and our family. Again, 915-588-1850. But again, joining us here in studio, our guests today are Danielle Brissette, Site Manager, and Machelle Wood, Education and Public Programs Coordinator with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. We've been talking a lot about some of the different aspects of both y'all's work as well, the history involved with it. But again, the real reason we're talking about this today for, again, the season, as appropriate with it, the night tour that is coming up here on October 28th. That people are going to get the chance to, again, see the home in a different way than you usually can, because you say this can be a recurring event, of course, here, but this happens pretty much once a year, right?
Yes, absolutely.
One night only, October 28th.
October, yes.
Let's not get into November yet. And we're going to have the lights on through the home, candlelight and those kind of things, so you can see it the way that it was. And we'll have stories that focus on the end of life, the passing beyond, and how that was through time and through El Paso's history in particular. Some of the stories are a little quirky, and I think that they'll be of interest.
Definitely outside of the norm for a lot of people's experience at this point in time here. So in a lot of different aspects, and again, some of the pictures of some previous tours and nighttime exhibitions that you all have had that we have been putting up over on the social media. So check those out if you want to see that online. Again, streaming on facebook.com/El Paso History Radio Show. But we got to take that next break now, get to the top of the hour in any case, and then come back. So we'll talk more about what will be on exhibition, some of that history, and how funerals, end of life worked at that point in time, because as much as we've shown how El Paso looked differently, you can only imagine how things worked differently at those points without having experienced it. So we'll talk more about that and a lot more details out of this next break. Again, you are tuned into the El Paso History Show, airing here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Continuing on with our guests from the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. But again, that website to find those details is, of course, over on the El Paso. We've got the link over on the El Paso History Radio Show page. But again, visit MagoffinHome.com. So Danielle, Machelle, stick around with us, and we'll be back with you here and with you all as well here in the second hour of the program right after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest.
Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152.
M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Waco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail, plus the Guadalupe Mission in Juarez, Mexico. That church was built in 1659 and is the oldest known adobe building on the El Paso Juarez Valley. It still welcomes Catholic worshipers today. Go to El Paso History TV on youtube.com. You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest.
Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152.
M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1 EP.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show in Hour 2 of the program, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk, continuing to talk about the Magoffin Home State Historic Site with our guests here in studio today. But of course, we are starting out the Hour 2 of the program, as we usually do, with a history moment produced by documentary filmmaker Jackson Polk, talking about this week some of the local history from a previous occurrence, the 1918 flu pandemic.
As the First World War raged in Europe, what they called the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 was happening across the globe, including El Paso. In just 17 weeks, from September 1918 to January 1919, the virus killed as many as 50 million people worldwide, far more than the deaths in World War I. In 1918, El Paso was a small but bustling town of about 75,000. Hundreds of people died from influenza, many of them children. On October 3, 1918, El Paso Mayor Charles Davis closed all schools, churches, theaters, and other public places. On October 18, 1918, Fort Bliss reported 1,309 cases of flu. Many were soldiers who had just returned from Europe, where the flu was raging. The flu was remarkable in how quickly it took lives. Some died within hours of contracting the disease. There were reports of people coming home in the evening feeling unwell and being carried out of their home dead the next morning. Health officials made it mandatory for residents to wear face masks in public, and they were told to avoid crowds in packed cars. Residents of South El Paso, where there was no hospital and limited health services, suffered the most. On one day in October, there were 37 deaths in the area, and 22 sick people were found in one home. By the time the threat of the flu had subsided in early 1919, El Paso had an estimated 600 flu deaths. Many victims were buried in Concordia Cemetery, where the cause of death was rarely recorded. And as history notes, the so-called Spanish flu neither emerged from Spain nor is believed to have originated there. I'm Jackson Polk with this history moment for the El Paso History Radio Show.
Of course, I want to mention some of our other great partners in talking about and promoting aspects of local history. The great Facebook group run by Barbara Given Bainey. The great Facebook group Remember in El Paso When. You can go there for archive pictures galore on a lot of different topics. More than 33,000 members, and it's no mean feat to keep such a group and such a large group on task and on target. So please remember, the administrators have worked hard in researching photos with our history attached. When you use their photos, they ask that credit be given to their site, and again, a lot of credit to be given to Chief Admin, owner, and historian Barbara Given Bainey, affectionately known as BGB. Also admins Rick Duncan, Rick Nahara, Margaret D. Smith, and moderators Ben Vincent and Al Lowe. Can appreciate all the work they do. They're always looking for a little bit more assistance in order to, again, keep the group on track and keep it from being spammed out of existence, which a lot of other groups I've seen happen. So the fact that they haven't had that done is a great credit to them. So if you want to join their team and help them out with that, please give them a call or, well, look them up. Again, Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. But, of course, right now we are still joined here in studio by Danielle Brissette, the site manager, and Machelle Wood, the Education and Public Programs Coordinator with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site, which, of course, we are talking about in reference to, not exactly focused on, but of course including what was just in that history moment there of, disease, death, dying, and the process, particularly at the end of life at this point and throughout different points of El Paso's history, as can be further exemplified both by the Magoffin home itself, the family that lived there, and how they lived and died there.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the things that we found in our research that really was kind of interesting. One thing is, embalming. We tend to think of embalming as just being very normal today, but really that comes with the Civil War. Prior to the Civil War, embalming was actually seen as ridiculous and unnecessary. Bodies were prepared in the home. They were cleaned,
right,
dressed, and prepared for funerals by family members typically. And that was it. But with the Civil War, you had, unfortunately, people dying on battlefields far away from homes. And they had to be railroad shipped back to their families. And so to preserve the bodies, embalming came about. And embalmers would be on the battlefield and collecting bodies and shipping them back to families who had prepaid for the service. I mean, if you can imagine, prepaying for embalming before a battle. I mean, yeah, that's heavy. And then, so that carries past the Civil War, okay? Now all the weird stigmas that were in existence prior to the Civil War were kind of starting to wear down after embalming had been around for a while. So what happens in El Paso that we see is there are embalmers, but do you know who they are? They are the guys who are working in the livery stables with horses.
Okay, I was going to guess barbers because there was a whole lot attached with them with like tooth extractions, but that makes its own level of sense.
The first embalmers here in El Paso were actually stable workers, and you weren't required to be licensed. That won't happen until like 1938.
Well, sure, it's a dead body. Why would you need a license for that? I'm sure they were thinking at the time.
I know, exactly, right? Little did they know all the chemicals they're using and everything. But it's not until Harriet's passing in the 40s that you get the first family member who now is dealing with licensed embalmers. I mean, just simple things like that. Josephine Magoffin Richardson, Uncle Charlie's wife, she actually dies in the home in 1886, actually October 12th, 1886. And her funeral is held on October 14th in the home, in the formal parlor. And so the family prepared her body. I don't have any indication that she would have been embalmed. No mention of stable workers coming over to take care of her. But she would have been prepared and laid out in the formal parlor prior to her funeral. She then gets buried in Concordia because Concordia at that time was the only cemetery really available in the area. It's not until the 1890s that you see Evergreen open up.
Right.
Now, that's an interesting story, too, because what ends up happening is Evergreen was our first sort of corporate cemetery here.
Okay.
There was actually a corporation in charge of it. And they went about promoting Evergreen by going to, like, teachers and giving them free corsages and sporting goods equipment for
teachers.
Yes.
Okay.
In schools, like students were getting free sporting goods equipment. Yeah. It was all sorts of swag. Yeah. It was the original swag all the way back in the 1890s that was being just thrown out into the community by Evergreen. And so, of course, the Magoffins are looking at this, and they were promoting it in the newspapers with all these articles about how much they were spending money on landscaping and what kind of trees they were planting. And it was going to have grass. Very different than Concordia,
yes, that's
right?
true. Mm-hmm.
It's much more desert landscape, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, this is going to appeal to the Magoffin family. So they actually went to Dr. Yandell, who was the county medical officer at the time, and they had to submit a request for exhuming her body to have her moved to Evergreen. They bought a plot in Evergreen in the Catholic section because, they were a Catholic family, and reburied her there. And that's where the family plot is today. But the funny thing was there were a lot of people who were trying to move family members out of Concordia and bury them in the much prettier Evergreen Cemetery. And they were doing it without going to Dr. Yandell first, though.
So, again,
like an at-home body removal.
Yeah,
and
dig her up. Go get the shovel.
It's not grave robbing. That's my aunt. I can see that being problematic.
But in a way, okay, that part sounds creepy. But the part of dying at home and staying at home and being cared for by your family in that respectful and loving way really appeals to me. Yeah. It's a little bit of a different than what we do today, where we very much bring in professionals to help us with this time.
Professional, it's clinical.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think back then, because it was happening in a home environment, because healthcare was not what it is today, people were much more comfortable with the concept.
Home visits were the norm.
Before, yes, and they had a different way of talking to each other about death and dying. They had a way of talking about it in the newspapers, of letting society know what's happening. Society responded as well.
Yeah.
So Josephine was in the home, but so was hundreds of people from across El Paso and the Wadas, and who came to pay their respects and support the family. And that's we just talked about one tiny snippet, but Michelle's done research on over a dozen family members, which are going to enrich these night tours. And so each person has a very unique and intimate death. And an interesting story.
Very shaped by the time period in which they passed.
Yes.
I mean, that's
which
the
again
fun
is
part.
100 years of El Paso history.
Absolutely. There was something I was going to mention and I totally forgot it. But basically, I know what it is. Okay, so, today there is this whole movement now going back to the same concept of, we have hospice care, end of life, in your home, not in a hospital, right? Well, that's the same thing that they would have experienced then, because this is before a hospital is even built.
Right.
We get so many people asking us, so did anybody die in the home? Well, of course they did.
Where else would they? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise they die, they have a stroke in the middle of the street. Of course, you would prefer you died in your home at this time period.
Yeah, those either dying at home or some gruesome circumstance such as, battlefield, like you were talking about here, which I'm also recalling that as much as it is, again, gruesome to think about prepaying for embalming services, I mean, at that point, it would have been thinking about we have the family funeral plot ready, that kind of thing, or I would say even more gruesomely, the precursor to dog tags. There are stories of, from the Civil War, individuals pinning little bits of scrap paper available at that time saying, this is who I am, please send me to such and such location, because, dog tags weren't a concept back then at that point either. So those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I can plug a different organization, Ken Burns's documentary, Death and Dying During the Civil War, is a fantastic glimpse at the way that America has changed on this topic. And if you had a chance to watch that before coming on the night tours, it would only enrich your experience. It's a good time of year for that.
Fair enough. No, that's a very valid and relevant reason to talk about that there. So again, the fact of it, you got talk about pre-embalming. There are different religious and cultural traditions about, such as washing the body or covering the body in oil or dressing it in certain, garments or linens and things like that. And that was both it's pretty much for the living at that point, for a way of them and rights and comfort that come along with that, but also practical matters of dealing with pre-embalming and pre-refrigeration. I want to make that point as well. How you deal with, there are various gruesome phrases I'm not going to mention, but rigor mortis being one of them that happens in the process of a body and a person being deceased that, again, these were all meant to kind of deal with in their own way. So those are, again, some of the more things that you'll go through in this tour, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of flowers, we always send flowers for a funeral, and how much of that comes from the idea it's masking the smell of decay.
Absolutely. You could even go back to the plague doctors from, the Black Plague, the huge beaks. It wasn't just an affectation. It was filled with flowers and incense because of trying to ward off smells and the idea of humors, and you start getting into things like that. But again, you can draw those forward through today.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you definitely get senses and just how much that changes. What time period did the Magoffins start passing away in hospitals under medical care? Something as simple as that. Even just the things the way things are described as they're dying. We know from when Octavia, Joseph's wife, dies, it's described as a paralytic disease. We think it's polio because this is in 1906, and apparently it's a disease that's passing in the southwest region at the time. But they don't call it polio. Later on, you start getting descriptions that we would recognize. Oh, that's why she died. Or that, General Glasgow died from a heart attack. Okay, well, we know what a heart attack is.
Yeah. Just kind of, the way that, basically the difference between home care, the kind of, home sense of it and the kind of comfort sense of it to this more clinical nature is both different human interactions, but does leave something maybe for the historical record to be gone away. One example comes to mind is the way that we have described PTSD over the years, from where it was, shell shock, World War I, combat fatigue, World War II, those kind of things, or the fact of that going with a somewhat more contemporaneous example of, what a lot of Edgar Allan Poe's family died from, wasting disease, which we now know is tuberculosis-related things, but they didn't have the names or necessarily the understanding of that at that point in time. So that's kind of what it takes to parse through the historical record that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, just imagining yourself in a time period where you're using these terms that are very broad. There isn't anything very, and just the kinds of treatments that were available, and the fact that you are caring, like Octavia, here she was caring for people who were ill with polio, a contagious disease, no cures, no treatments, no vaccinations available, and then she ends up passing.
And she didn't know how to protect herself.
Right.
With the best of intentions. And
right. Right. I mean,
The process of studying history, I oftentimes is a process of translation.
Oh yeah.
And it's much like translating from one language to another, where
It is.
you think you know what you're talking about, but you cannot. It takes a lot of research and study, and that's what we like to be able to parse out at the Magoffin home. We love the tours that take 2 hours, and let's talk the details.
Partial to that kind of time frame myself here. Yeah. Phrase that comes to mind here is the past is a foreign land. They do things differently there here. So again, that's Danielle Brissette, also of course speaking with here Machelle Wood, both with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site, talking more about them. Of course, the upcoming event that we do have, of course, has some of the information on the night tours that'll be happening this year, October 28th. Be sure to find those details and information by visiting them over at visitmagoffinhome.com. That's visit Magoffin, Magoffin home.com to find those details here. So we're talking more about them and what's coming up on the tours and those related things after this break with more here on the El Paso History Radio Show on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Given-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano, and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest.
Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the Juan and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152.
M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm, of course, your host, Andrew J. Polk. Of course, got to tell you what we got coming up for you next week on the programming, continuing and kind of closing out our theming for this part of the season. Going to be talking next week with the Purchase Funeral Home, and specifically in regards to their El Paso Funeral Museum, and of course their upcoming events and recognitions of, well, the days that we got coming up here, including a Dia de los Muertos and the end of the month, and includes, of course, their interesting exhibits and even technically rolling stock that they've got available, including hearses from over the centuries. So we'll be talking about that and all of those details again next week on the program. But of course, one more sponsor to remind you about, Mission Del Rey Southwest. Go there with out-of-town gifts and to find gifts for your out-of-town guests. Jewelry, gifts, decor items. So wherever you are, if you're in town, out of town, around the world, they will ship to get these great items. Again, literal taste of the Southwest as well, always getting restocked with more food items and as well decor. Specifically, they've got a great clearance area, but also a lot of these cast aluminum furniture they got right now, styled and stained to make it look just about like you would have any kind of those kind of wrought iron patio furniture, but a lot lighter and a lot less likely to crush your foot if it falls over. So again, check them out. Their 12,000 square foot showroom on Lee Trevino and Pelicano. Give them a call at 915-440-2140. That's 915-440-2140, or visit missiondelrey.com. Again, they do ship around the world, and make sure to mention the El Paso History Radio Show for a discount. Again, joined here in studio right now by Danielle Brissette, the site manager, and Machelle Wood, the education and public programs coordinator with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. So, of course, we have been talking about and a lot of focus on the upcoming night tours that will again be happening October 28th this year, that Friday. So, a good way to kick off the Halloween weekend. And just in regards to that, people, and I have been on them myself here, may have had in previous years been familiar with there being some supernatural focus at the home here and some stories that have come out of that. How is that all handled with you all at this point in time?
So, our mission and our tagline for the Texas Historical Commission is real places telling real stories.
Mm-hmm.
In a very real context,
mm-hmm.
there are a lot of creepy subjects that we can cover. But our mission really is to focus on the historic aspect of what's going on. So we focus, that's why we do the night tours. That's why we focus on, death. That is a very real aspect that everyone deals with.
We can't know for sure what happens once we die, but we do know what led up to the deaths and what happened after the deaths of all of these people.
And how family members were treated, for their funeral, how they were prepared. Yeah, absolutely.
And so we focus on the true stories that help to enrich some of those other things. We don't focus on the paranormal at the Magoffin home, but we encourage that as an interest that can help lead people to a greater understanding and appreciation of history.
Yeah.
So if you've come in the past and had a ghost-like experience, that's not what we'll focus on your tour, but I think it might provide some context that will help you understand that and might make those experiences you have in the future more interesting.
Yeah. Well, let me just put it this way. The way I have thought about it in any case is that, there are quote-unquote spooky places out there where you may feel presences, but whenever it's been talked about within the Magoffin home, it's always been talked about as in relation to people. Actual people that have lived there and are more or less considered identifiable, such as, the lady in blue that has been talked about being identified as most likely, Josephina or things like that, or Uncle Charlie previously. There have been conversations like this, so it's not even necessarily those who are interested in that thing. You'll be learning about still the individuals that may have not have been experienced in that way, but you all are focusing on the history of how they lived, and again, specifically with this night tour, how they died.
Yes, absolutely.
I read a neat theory about the ghosts that in the 1970s, when Octavia lived there, she was an elderly lady who had trouble sleeping, hot flashes in the middle of the night. She'd be up at 2 a.m. watering her garden in a nightgown. And that if you saw her when you were walking by on your way home, it might give you a fright.
Yeah, absolutely. And my favorite is Uncle Charlie's rocking chair.
Of course.
Everyone asks about that, and I have to point out and show them physically, because you can actually do this. Anyone can do it. Our floors are 147 years old. The wood has not been fully replaced. And so if rocking chairs, with their little round rails, if they are balanced over two boards, and mind you, the boards are only about 6 inches wide at the maximum. Okay. So if it's on the seam, which it will be just by the size of the boards, you literally, if you just rock your foot back and forth, and it doesn't take much, maybe about an inch or so, if that, and just rock it back and forth, guess what? The rocking chair starts rocking. If you walk by it too fast and you bounce the boards too quick, it will start rocking.
So again, some of that being, again, the history around it discussed here, but of course had to bring that up for this season here again. Danielle Brissette, Machelle Wood with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. Again, visit magoffinhome.com, the place to find out all these details, information about this coming night tour. But that does lead us to an important question that we'll have to get into next segment about how you do have the home represented and the restoration that it takes here. So we'll be back with that and a whole lot more after this next break on the El Paso History Radio Show here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archived radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Given-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest.
Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152.
M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Of course, a lot of things that we talk about with our partners in promoting aspects of history, and you can, of course, go to El Paso Inc. each and every week to see further with some pictures, our promo announcements, and what we've got coming up for that following week on the program. So make sure to check out, of course, their unique and in-depth reporting that you'll find only in El Paso Inc. each and every week. El Paso's business journal, El Paso Inc., is available for home or business delivery. To receive El Paso Inc. or get your online subscription, visit elpasoinc.com. And again, look for our promo announcements there. But again, we've been talking this hour right now with Danielle Brissette, the site manager, and Machelle Wood, the education and public programs coordinator, both with the Magoffin Home State Historic Site, and a lot of course, reference to what will be going on in this upcoming weeks or so with the Magoffin Home Night Tours happening this year, October 28th. One night only, so make sure to get your reservation in advance by visiting, again, visit magoffinhome.com. Those three words, visit Magoffin Home, and Magoffin, Magoffin, home.com. But of course, the way that you handle the history, when we're talking about, again, a generational dwelling showing generation, more than 100 years that we've been talking about, of history here in El Paso, I mean, in several generations of habitation. Considering the restoration of it then, I mean, you were mentioning what you're talking about with the front rooms, about maybe taking that to the last inhabitant of the family in any case, in about the 1960s, 70s. But of course, we're going back well into, like I said, the antebellum period with some of these parts here. So how do you even then conceive and coordinate how you maintain parts and restore parts? Where do you even begin with those kind of topics?
Honestly, it takes research and whole lots of conversation with a whole lot of different people with different specialties. And actually, we just went through this process. An interpretive master plan is what we call that. So there is a whole process that a historic home would go through to develop this. And it starts with research.
Starts with the real history, and all of the records, photos, maps, schematics of electrical plugs, and where the bathtub was laid. And
what did the neighborhood look like? Who was living around them? I mean, it's a lot of information. And you have about a team of 5 or 6 people who are looking at different aspects, and they're each taking their own piece. And then they come together, and they even talk with the stakeholders, which is all of us here in El Paso. We invited different people, to come in and give their ideas and their views on things. And that gets put into that as well. So they take and they parse that and they think about things like, when we're walking through the home, earlier you were talking, Danielle, about, and you too, Andrew, about looking from one to the puffer fish and the Victorian formal parlor into Tia's 1960s, 1970s living space, juxtaposing those two things. Well, it's also divided by Josephine's beautiful white pristine hallway.
Right, of course.
So you kind of have that divider. And things like that come into play, and you see that within the interpretive master plan. It's like, how do we keep people from having like time travel hysteria moving through the home, going from one time period to the next? Well, we have, gentle transitions, and, those things get built in.
And we try to delineate. We've got sort of 3 different eras, which we focus on. And then there's also thematic themes that carry across generations.
Of course.
And so sometimes when us or our guests get a little confused by which year and which person, focusing on some of those strands that carry throughout can help. And water is one of those stories for El Paso, for all of us.
Well, definitely.
From ancient days, it's been an important resource. And it's one the Magoffins dealt with. And so that's a neat way to talk about even contemporary issues through the historical lens.
And food. Food history is amazing.
Work as well. The Magoffins had a huge number of people who supported the home and their industry. I think Machelle has counted 39 different individuals who worked for the home at one time, which is
really
a huge number, especially when you look at the size of the population for the time period.
That's a definable portion,
It is, actually. And so all of those people contributed, and that's another thread that we can pick up and that we hope to bring deeper into the home as we go on and we bring more research to bear on what we've got.
So what are the time periods that you have on exhibition in the home right now?
So I think the earliest, we deal from 1870, well, actually it's past 1875. The first view of the home you get is post-railroad. Because before the railroad, they had whitewashed walls. They had, very basic finishes. It's
not a lot of stuff.
No. Wallpaper and things like that don't get delivered until the train comes in, right?
It's not that it's impossible or that it didn't exist at that time,
expensive.
But you weren't bringing that stuff across. Like, sure, someone here could have had a player piano in, as soon as it was invented. The likelihood, however, of them dragging that across the desert in a back of a wagon is unlikely at best.
Yeah, absolutely. Or paying even someone else to do it. The expense of that, is just insane.
So to simplify, 1880s and
1940s. No, 1920s.
20s to 40s.
40s.
And then we're going to throw in the 60s and the 70s.
Gotcha.
And throw in makes it sound really...
Yeah, just like toss that in.
No, it's been years of work that will be coming to a fruition finally.
Yeah.
And again, one of the ways that you and people visiting the home can literally see it, the way that this is, again, the phrase I kind of think of is like a horizontal archaeology, because dealing with the actual literal walls of the home, given that there have been, the different eras of habitation and the people living there, not that they were disrespectful, but they weren't worried about how are we going to represent the history of our family. No, it's like, I hate the color of these walls. I'm putting up wallpaper. So you can kind of literally carefully dig through the walls and expose the different layers of just literally the wall decorations that they had up there.
Imagine if somebody did this to our lives, started digging through the photographs that we have from our family Christmases and things to figure out, well, did they leave their dirty dishes on the left side of the sink or the right side of the sink? That's the kind of thing we're doing to the Magoffins, which is...
Or removing paint layers and questioning your paint choices and your taste.
How dare she?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of backseat driving on the aesthetics of the Magoffin home, but we're trying to bring it to what they would have liked, regardless of our own opinions.
Yeah, a lot of hindsight 2020 kind of thing as you're staring it down as you look through the walls here.
And it's a preservation challenge, just the composition of the walls.
Oh, God bless,
dirt laid on dirt, stacked 14 feet in the air, and it's held together with not much.
No, it's weak ionic bonds. That's what that is.
Yeah, referring there to adobe, which is maybe an ungenerous phrasing of it, but accurate nonetheless here, that it is dirt with some stuff in it, basically. Usually, depending on some of the recipes, either straw or manure. So the fact of the matter is that, it's what was available. We didn't have huge stocks, particularly pre-railroad when this house was initially being constructed, of, great timber. If they had it, that was probably being reserved for the roof, where you can't really do adobe vertically across a void. Doesn't work. And great stacked, not so great when there's nothing under it.
The timber had to be transported down from up near Ruidoso. Which is a nightmare in itself, dragging a tree down that mountain with a mule.
Exactly. So that's why it was possible, but they weren't going to be, let's build a log cabin. That would have been extravagant in this area at that point in time.
But I love the way that the home is built of the city. It's literally built of the physical foundation, and it is foundational in a way. Joseph Magoffin's home has those lines in the front, just like George Washington's home does at Mount Vernon. And in a way, he's kind of like the George Washington of El Paso.
Right.
It can be a problematic comparison in some ways, But
Again, the past is a foreign land. They did things differently there, and that
Yes.
applies in both the language, the terminology, and the custom, the socially acceptable things at that
Yes.
point in time here, which is another reason to study it. And you're going to have that picture of the front of the building as you walk into it. That kind of still, I mean, it's still got grounds. It's stately in its own right for El Paso.
Yes.
One of the things that's always fascinating me about the walls here is that, sure, it is what was available, but there were definable benefits for them having done the
Yes.
Adobe construction.
yeah.
The original air conditioning is what I think about it as,
yeah.
about not necessarily making it cooler, but time delaying the heat and the cool of the day, so that one of those coolest points is unlike, midday, mid-afternoon, and one of the warmest points of the day is then at the night. So it just kind of takes what you expect the passage of time of like, oh yeah, mid-afternoon is the hottest. Nope. We have just
Yeah.
taken that clock and shifted it 12 hours so that, because that's how long it takes to essentially seep through the walls.
Yes, absolutely. There's that. And, I teach Adobe classes to little kiddos.
Ah, okay.
And one of the things that I like to talk about is the fact that you talk about sustainable building in El Paso. This is something that anyone can mix together, can
That's true.
make. Okay, it takes time, it takes effort. Don't get me wrong, and yes,
Oh, yeah.
it takes some skill to do it. But at the same time, let's say, heaven forbid, a wall falls or something. All you have to do is gather up the Adobe, break it back up, mix
can use
water,
it again,
and
yeah.
redo it again. You've wasted nothing. And let's say, even worst case scenario, you move away from the home and you just let it go, and it decays. What's it decaying into? Dirt, clay,
The thing
straw.
it's made of, yeah.
Yeah.
it's not a hazardous site to clean up.
No.
It's
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about preservation chemicals, and I mean, literally made of the land here. And I mean, also another finer point to be made is that the construction and the creation of it takes patience, but
Yes.
it's also pretty simple. I mean, these are not bricks. I mean, we
No.
refer to like Adobe blocks, but these are not fired by any means.
No.
They are dried.
Right. The chemical processes that are necessary to make an Adobe brick way less requiring of chemistry knowledge than say firing a brick.
Firing a brick, Portland cement, any
Yes.
of these
and
things.
Yeah.
before
Any of it.
1881, every building in El Paso looked like the Magoffin home. I mean, not as large and probably not
sure.
as nice looking, but everything was Adobe. And it's a vision of this city that I don't think any of us really can hold in our brains, because there isn't really very many images from that time. It's something we have to
True.
invent, and we have to sort of create in our own mind's eye.
And isn't it crazy that as soon as the train arrives, suddenly Adobe is very passé. It's considered old-fashioned. In fact, there's many cartoons and articles calling Joseph an old turtle for having his old Adobe buildings.
A turtle. Okay.
Yes,
Out of
yes,
fashion.
an old tortoise. He was called an old tortoise with his old Adobes.
Interesting adjectives used there, but
Yeah.
in any case, we got to take that next break now. Again, Danielle Brissette, site manager, Machelle Wood, education and public programs coordinator for the Magoffin Home State Historic Site, talking more about, and of course in relation to what they got coming up for you in these coming days at the Magoffin Home with their night tours, again juxtaposing the day and the night views there. So make sure to register and get your tickets online for that over on visitmagoffinhome.com. That's visit Magoffin, Magoffin home.com. But got to take that next break, so stay tuned for more here on the El Paso History Radio Show on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Given-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archive pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano, and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest.
Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152.
M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. A lot of topics we've discussed here today with our guests in studio, Danielle Brissette, Site Manager, and Machelle Wood, Education and Public Programs Coordinator with, of course, the Magoffin Home State Historic Site. A couple of reasons that we're doing this, of course, for the season is that we, of course, have that upcoming night tour that will be available on October 28th. If people want to get the chance to again see the home in a different circumstance than you can pretty much any other time of the year, besides like just driving by it at night, which if that's your thing, that's fine. But if you really want to get into it and see the history, this is definitely a much better way and a more in-depth view. You can see it, see the eras of history, and again, the ongoing work that you all are going to be doing and going to be having. But of course, there is a lot more than going on at the home besides just this, including, of course, getting back into your extended hours again, right?
Yes. So we will be opening on Sundays from 9 o'clock until 4 o'clock. The last tour will be at 4. Going forward, starting the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And that should be a permanent change. So when you've got family in town for the holidays, we'll be here for you both weekend days.
Absolutely. And so, of course, important things to keep in mind there as you want to go around, see it. And, of course, also, and I honestly didn't realize this till we were talking beforehand, people can actually book the Magoffin home, right, for events and for other celebrations.
Yes. Actually, we do rent the grounds, courtyard, grounds of the home, and also space within the visitor center. And they can find information on that, pricing, and online under visit magoffinhome.com. On the side, there is a rental policy link that you can click that actually gives you all the information, and you can call us for availability.
Absolutely there. But of course, it's not even just that we've got this coming of events or that people can hold events on the grounds there, but you also have quite the recurring schedule of events, monthly ones that happen, again, with regularity if people haven't had or been looking for an excuse to go and visit, that kind of a thing. There's a lot of good ones.
Absolutely.
We have a free community yoga program, which happens 2 to 3 times a month, a regular historic cooking class based on historic recipes that were published in El Paso, and that's a well-loved regular event. We have a Make-A-Thing, which is a more of a kid-focused, hands-on. Explain.
Well, not necessarily kid-focused, but definitely much more about creating things.
Okay.
Learning different new ways to craft that were based on things that were done in the past.
Can you tell us about a couple more of our monthly programs?
Oh, sure. Why not? We've got the Brain Trust Brown Bag Lunch lecture series, and that one actually is coming up next Wednesday, where I'll be talking about how to clean monuments like gravestones,
which has been popular online and in various ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to use our cornerstone from the city hall in our courtyard to demonstrate. And then we've also got a Victorian book club. We do that once a month on a Saturday. I believe it's second Saturday of the month, I do believe. But do check our website for the dates and
this
for
month,
the books.
Oops, sorry.
I'm just kidding.
This month, we also have an exchange with the El Paso Museum of Archaeology, where if you visit their museum and do a scavenger hunt, you can get free admission at ours. Or if you visit our museum and do a scavenger hunt, you can have a free workshop at theirs. There's also our small Ofrenda exhibit, which will be on display
of course,
through the beginning of November. So we've got a lot of options, and we hope you join us.
Absolutely. And again, that'll be on exhibition during the night tours. Again, coming up October 28th. Just want to make sure we keep that with all the stuff you got going on. That one clear so people know exactly what they can do, find out, and experience out there, because I've gotten the chance uniquely over many years to get through a lot of different areas and a lot of different ways through the home. So anyone else getting an opportunity anywhere near that to go and see the grounds and see them in unique ways, definitely would encourage people to do so. So of course, with all the stuff you all got going on and the ongoing restoration and renovations isn't the right word, but restoration in a different sense, in a different time frame. In any case, here all got going on for people visiting either for this upcoming event or just in general. What do you hope that they get out of the home, or that they get an understanding of once they've had their visit?
I think for me, just I want them to walk out of the home feeling like it's been meaningful. There's something. It may be something small. Like, for example, I have one gentleman who was very interested in the plumbing, just the construction of the plumbing and how that worked. And that was really meaningful to him. I love seeing that, like, wow, you know what? That was really cool thing that happens.
For me, I would say I would want people to walk out with a sense of pride, especially El Pasoans. As a native El Pasoan myself, every time I walk in and out of the home, I feel a sense of ownership and pride in what we've built together and in what small people can do with a consistent lifetime's worth of effort. So I hope people see the Magoffin home and take it home with them and think about their civic relationships and their families, and maybe even just put your name on the back of a picture so people know who someone is.
Right.
So useful to have mundane details we don't think about at all that can be so helpful to the historical record in a long time. We've talked about that a lot on this program here. But again, that's Danielle Brissette, the site manager, and also, of course, joining us here in studio and speaking previously, Machelle Wood, the Education and Public Program Coordinator. We are definitely going to be having a good time at visiting out there. I hope I can make, I won't try to take up a spot on this tour, but I'll need to make it out there before too long here. So again, find those details. Visit magoffinhome.com. That's again, visit MAGOFFIN home.com for those details. So Danielle and Machelle, thank you very much for coming in today to talk to us about these details, about the events and all the things available at the Magoffin home here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all very much for having joined us here for the El Paso History Radio Show as well. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. See you all next week on the program. Again, headed out to Pepe's right after the show here. But in the meantime, have a great weekend, y'all. See you next week.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Given-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archive pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano, and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest.
Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152.
M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Waco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC 7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail, plus the Guadalupe Mission in Juarez, Mexico. That church was